Hello, people. It's been a while, in terms of singular content where I am just speaking. I've been uploading these Twitter spaces. There's an interesting one on the nature of religion and art, but I won't promo it too much because I have to ask the guy that I recorded it from that's participating. Ariel Pink is on it. I think he came to the end, yeah. But what I wanted to do here is I'm promoting my newest Substack article that will be, for the people who don't know, please go to my Substack and my Telegram for my more spicier, short, they're not even articles, they're just blog posts. I'm here outside, so if you hear some ambient noises, it's a nice day out. I think it's going to rain soon, but I wanted to, I got the idea from John David Ebert, who does this, but I think his articles are on his Patreon and they're behind a paywall. But he gives a pretty good synopsis of them if you want to read the whole thing. In the future, I think I probably will have a Ko-Fi, especially if, I'm not going to say anything, it's not definitive, but I've been thinking a lot about my future and what to do. But this article is the first in a series on the nature of the, I guess you could call it online right or dissident right. I just call it, for argument's sake, the E-right. Sorry, that's a tarp. And this started from a few weeks ago. I took a Twitter break after this tweet that went semi-viral where I was quote-unquote blackpilling. It was more so a subtweet of a certain thinker who was profiled in the New York Times. I wouldn't even call him, he's not even a thinker. He sells fake books, as Justin Murphy calls him. But, grifty man, Paul Scholas. I subtweeted him, but really it became this whole conversation around what is the purpose of being someone who is an online poster in a quote-unquote dissident space, and whether that thing is real or not, whether there's such a thing as the dissident right. And I got a lot of pushback, usual trolling crap, but I got some insightful replies from people that I know. People like Josh Neal, people like my buddy Astral, people like my friend Alex Kashuta, people like Default Friend. Who else? I'm thinking of someone else. Schwab Real Human. And I don't know what happened to him. I think he deactivated on Twitter. I don't know what happened. But, or they got him. They probably got him. So what happened was I took a Twitter break just to clear my head and because you have to realize I've been on this for years now, building up an audience. And it's a lot of thankless work, and I feel like in some ways I've always been under the umbrella of other people. And so I was just saying that in some ways it's kind of thankless. And what I wanted to do is that I wanted to translate this sort of nebulous blackpilling, because people were saying, isn't it the nature of being able to discern truth its own reward, quote unquote, truth? Is it being able to operate within a space of intellectual freedom? But then I said that, truth, the nature of truth is intimately tied to power. And the free, quote unquote, freedom that you're given in these spaces is equally buttressed up against the limiting, rules of policing and gatekeeping, but also just people that when you get to a certain level, they'll view you for whatever reason as someone who is not worthy, and so they will become dedicated A-logs and ankle biters. And I've managed to avoid some of that. I mean, I've gotten some pushback from people. It's inevitable that if you have a big enough profile that you're going to get some pushback. But what this turned into is I took these sort of criticisms that, let's face it, to be totally honest, come from my frustrations with things. And I wanted to actually create sort of like a map of the ecology of online distance spaces, wherever it takes me. And so this came into, while I was taking a Twitter break, mapping out a very long project, hopefully, into understanding the nature of the E-right, but also, I guess, other underground subcultures and spaces, and what it means to be a dissident in the internet age, and why the sort of like abstract machine of the internet, why it produces certain discourses and why it frames things in certain ways, and why there's a lot of background underlying ergogores and images of thought and so forth. And I also wanted to map out, I guess, for lack of a better term, the E-right in general. And I think that it will probably be at the end of it, hopefully. And this is, I guess, a promise. And I kept a promise to myself. I said that I wasn't going to return to Twitter unless I made the definitive first step, which is the beginning article that I put on Substack. And I kept that promise. I took 2 weeks off and I did it. But I'm hoping that the series becomes a definitive study, sort of, and I don't claim to be an expert in any of these fields, because I'm inevitably going to have to cover topics that other people are better at when it comes to nationalism and ideology and structural theory and so forth. And I want to leave it sufficiently open-ended, and from the beginning I want to claim that I am not someone who is an expert in everything. But I hope that it's probably going to be the most definitive mapping of the E-right since Angela Nagel's book, K-Word All Normies, the book. One day I hope to actually talk to her. I know a lot of friends have interviewed her. Default friend, Alex Kashuda, who else? I think she talked to the Fed Post guys, and I wanted to, I think maybe I want to make it happen either personally or on BTR. There's some issues there, but anyways, I'm not going to get into that because I don't really know what the future holds. But I want to one day probably sit down with her once when the series is approaching its finish, and to really map it out, because I think that there are some assumptions she has, and I actually went out and bought the book. I remember reading it, I think reading excerpts when it first came out, but I actually went and bought it because people know those books behind me, they're not fake, they're real. I mean, I have more upstairs. I'm a fastidious bibliophile. My parents hate it, by the way, but anyways, I wanted to sort of take large chunks of her book and analyze it, because I think that she gets certain things right and certain things wrong. There are certain assumptions she makes, I think, because she was under the banner of Zero Books, that and because she wrote this in 2017, and as we know, 2017, that's especially with the last 2 years, that is an eternity when it comes to internet time. And so I just wanted to make a promo of this article. In the first chapter, I cover a lot of different things, and it's a general introduction to the whole series. I talk about sort of what makes a grifter, how it relates to the title of it is the Confederacy of Shitposters, and what does it mean to be an anonymous shitposter. And it references, of course, the Tool book, Confederacy of Dunces, because I feel that Ignatius J. Reilly, maybe because I've been compared to him a lot, sort of is a perfect archetypal example of what the modern dissident is like, at least in my spaces. So, yeah, I wanted to just give a promo. It'll be in the description. And I hope everyone reads it. Go and read it. I also cover, I think, I cover a lot of different things. But you have to go and read it for yourself. Next chapter will be on the nature of truth. And that's going to be a big one. I'm going to have to, I think it's good. And then also I'm going to have to tackle the anonymity question, which recently sparked up on Twitter when I came back. The podcaster, what's his name, Daryl Cooper, Martyr Maid, he was going after anonymity, and it became kind of ugly. But I have a very nuanced, that's a meme, but nuanced take on it. And hopefully people won't get too pissed at me. So this has been great. Please go and subscribe. Donate if you must. Like, share, subscribe. Go to my Telegram for the spicier takes. And yeah, so as always, God bless. Goodbye. Too sweet.